Thank you. Thank you, Queer Spectra team, and Ray, Tori, and Jose for having me today. I really am grateful to be here. I loved what Andrea had to say yesterday about curating your own experience, boundaries, and not owing people anything. I loved that so much. I loved what you said about not giving away your peace. I too want you to take away what you want to and leave the rest. Everything I say today might not be what you need, but hopefully I say something that you might need. I don't know if you had a stressful week like I did. Can you raise your hand or nod if you did have a stressful week like I did? Your week was great. That is amazing, and I love this for you. But we're going to start with a couple of deep breaths in and out. So we're going to do that 3 times. Deep breath in and out. And one more, or 2 more. Deep breath in and out. And one more. Okay, so I don't know who was here last night. I think a handful of you were, and we have a couple of newbies here as well. I want to make sure everybody has a journal and a pen. It's also okay if you choose not to participate this way. You can do it in your mind, you can do it on your phone, and you can also just choose not to do this. But I would love to hear from a few of you that were here, and even if you weren't, you can still just participate. This is gonna just be a shout out. You don't have to write this part down. I want to know what grounds you. If you were here last night, Andrea had you write some of this down, either in your queerness, and I know we have a couple of allies here today as well, or just what grounds you in general. I would love to hear from you on that topic. And also, I know some of you don't enjoy participating and you do not have to. So what grounds you? If you wrote this down in your journal last night, yes?
So nature grounds me, and also walks ground me. Just because it's all about, it's not about making anything or doing anything, it's just to walk.
I love that. So walking in nature. Mm-hmm. I love that. I also love going for walks in the neighborhood. Andrea?
Going to the gym to lift, and also a Peloton run, and then really just remembering that I'm okay, I'm enough as I am.
So she said the gym, Peloton run, and knowing that she's enough just as she is. I love that. Thank you.
Parenting grounds me. Parenting
grounds you.
Wow.
I love that. Can you expand? Are you okay to expand upon that a little bit more?
I mean, I think that there's just something, you have to be in touch with your own emotions, and in order to not just react to everything a child does, and you have to be connected, but you also have to be connected to them without being them.
I love that. How old are your kids?
My kid is 5.
5. Okay.
Can you give lessons to parents?
Yeah, are you teaching classes?
I need classes, if you know of any.
And I think that's great. I love that. All right, thank you. Is there anybody else? Oh yeah, we've got, I'm going to remember your name forever, Catherine.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my name as well, so Catherine.
Definitely the nature thing resonates with me, but being on a kickball team with my comrades for our College for Intersectional Inquiry at the U. So watching each other play kickball was just phenomenal.
Yes, kickball, I love that. And Lavon, what grounds you?
What grounds me is consciously breathing, like consciously taking the time to take the breath. Because it brings about awareness, you know, and put, not sure the pronouns, father over there, with the children, you know, being conscious and aware, that helps.
Breathing, yeah.
Yeah.
I've learned, I sometimes need to breathe before responding. I've had to learn that the last couple of years. Yes, River.
I feel like engaging in my creative practice grounds me. And it allows me to step back into the form of a mindful witness rather than like someone engaging and acting. So, yeah.
Creative process, yeah. I'm going to touch upon that a little bit later, so I'm not going to respond to you right now because otherwise I'll skip ahead of my speech. But I agree. I agree. When Andrea was talking about the ocean, it made me think about home. I loved that part of your speech. And there's something so grounding about the ocean for me and going home. No matter how long I've lived here, I've been here 23 years now, which is a weird feeling, being here longer than where I grew up. When I hit that, I don't know if any of you grew up somewhere else. I know several of you did. I know where Sadie grew up. I know where Ann grew up. I know where Lavon grew up. I know where Andrea grew up. But if you grew up somewhere else, when you hit that benchmark of being here longer than where you were born and raised, home always still feels, at least for me, home always still feels like home. And smelling that sea air and feeling it on your face and feeling the sand in your toes, there's just nothing like it. As beautiful as our mountains are and as beautiful as the scenery is here, the red rocks, I still remember the first time I ever looked at those red rocks in Torrey, and it just absolutely took my breath away. There's nothing like going home. And there's just something different, something grounding and something healing about being at that ocean. And I'm really excited because in a few weeks I'll be back there with my sister, my baby sister, and I feel it in my soul any year that I've skipped going home. It feels different, and it feels like something's missing inside of me. Queer Spectra has asked us back there, if you haven't participated yet, what grounds us in our queerness. And I've reflected about that, thought about it. And I've thought about my journey. And there's a small handful of you in here that know my journey personally. There's some of you that don't. There's some of you that are just finding out who I am today. But there's some of you that have seen me and seen my journey. And I have been valid in my queerness throughout my whole journey. You are valid in your queerness right now today and in your whole journey. Because I have friends that say to me, I don't know if I'm queer enough. You absolutely are, 100%. You're valid in your queerness. When I was Mormon and closeted, I was valid in my queerness then. No matter how I've shown up, no matter what I look like, no matter how long my hair was, no matter when I was getting my lashes done or wearing lipstick, I was valid in my queerness. No matter who I was in a relationship with, I was valid in my queerness. You are valid in your queerness. So I was thinking about what grounds me in my queerness. And my kids tell me all the time that I don't need to come out to people because I look queer. This is what they tell me. And yet, on a weekly basis, I'm not kidding, on a weekly basis, I have people that assume that I'm married to a man when I say my spouse, because we are existing in a heterosexual world. And these are not people I'm talking to on the phone. These are people I'm seeing in real life and having conversations with. People assume on a weekly basis that I am in a heterosexual relationship. And so on a weekly basis, I'm having to come out. I don't have to, by any means, but I want to, because I want to exist in my queerness. And so last night, when I think about what grounds me in my queerness, it was so beautiful. And I went home, and I stayed up way past my bedtime. You have to realize, one, I don't leave my house on a Friday night. It's so rare. I like to be in bed by 9 p.m. asleep. The night I met Andrea was a Friday night, and I was wearing sweatpants because it takes a lot for me to put on real pants on a Friday night and leave my house. But we met her at a poetry thing because I really wanted to go to it. It was a curation that Essie had done. And last night I went home and was processing last night. And I think what grounds me in my queerness is being in queer space. We need more queer space in Salt Lake City and in Utah. We don't have enough of it here. Last night was so moving. The answers people were giving, the performances, Andrea's speech, of course the art, but just existing in this space with all of you and with everybody that was here. There was wall-to-wall queer people, by the way, last night. And it felt so good. And anytime I can show up and exist with queer folks, it feels grounding. It makes me emotional thinking about it. All right, so I want to be sensitive to some people that might not be in the space to hear something sad. I'm going to touch upon a sad subject. I'm not going to go into detail, but I just want to give you that heads up. And I also want to give you the heads up, it's not about my garden, because I was like, give you the heads up when I talk about my garden. I personally don't feel like I was always grounded in my life. I feel like I had some things to learn. And before I got to this space, and frankly, I'm still learning. I feel like the snow we recently had was a metaphor for me because it made me cry. And I was worried about my garden, and it took this moment to laugh because I did not feel grounded in, I did not feel grounded in this moment. This moment here did not feel grounded at all because I'm crying and I'm frantically covering up my garden and telling my garden, please live, as the snow is coming down. And I realized that, things don't always go as planned, right? We have these bumps in life, and I'm just like, this has got to be a metaphor because I'm trying to prepare a talk for being grounded, and I'm certainly not feeling grounded in this moment. But also you have to realize that my garden, this is not a photo of my garden, by the way. I was not out there taking photos, I was frantically covering it up. You have to also realize my garden brings me a lot of joy. And it helps my mental health. I also realize this is a first world problem, completely realize this. But it also is something that I do to take care of my mental health. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about mental health here for a second. What I want to know, okay, now we can go to the next slide. What I want to know is, what are you doing to take care of your mental health? What are you doing for you? Because for me, I'm gardening. I'm doing a lot of things. I'm not just gardening. I'm doing a list of things. We're going to talk about that in a second. But what are you doing for you? So we're going to this is where you can journal write. So pull out those journals, pull out your phone. What are you doing for you? Let's play a song while we're doing this, so you're not just sitting here in silence. And we don't have to share with the group on this one, but if anyone feels like sharing, if you feel in a space to share, you can share, and if not, we can move on with this one. Does anybody feel like sharing what they wrote down? If not, it's totally okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I cook.
You cook? Oh my gosh. I have an Instagram called The Art of Queer Cooking.
Really?
Let's be friends on there and share cooking stuff together, because
Okay.
I love to cook as well. You cook. What's one of your favorite things to cook?
I make myself breakfast burritos
Heck
most days of
yeah.
the week.
That sounds so delicious. I love this so much. Okay, cooking that's great. That's one of our favorite things to do is cook. I love that. Anybody else want to share? Mindy?
I get up really early, mostly because we have a puppy, but I get up really early and light candles and do some witchy stuff. But getting up early when no one's around and it's just me feels like it sets my whole day to be a little bit.
The quiet in the house in the morning before, and I mean, I love witchy stuff, so heck yes. I love that. Anybody else? Yes.
I write.
You write?
Yeah, whatever I'm feeling, whatever I'm thinking about. Sometimes it turns into something good, sometimes it doesn't mean anything.
That's so good. I think writing is so key. I feel like that's great. Yes.
I sing at the top of my lungs in my car driving, well, wherever I can.
Yes.
I sing and I sing and I sing, and it really does something to my headspace.
Yeah, singing. I feel like that's so healing. Anybody else? Yes,
I
Tori.
also do a lot of driving, and so I do a driving meditation. It's less dangerous than it sounds. That's the color green. Because I drive to teaching little kids, and I drive home from teaching little kids, and you just want to sit in silence and be like, there's no sound around. That's my way to make it all safer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I also drive in a lot of silence. Yeah. Essie.
I curate my spaces, so there's two things that I've been doing. So I moved into my apartment at 29, right before I turned 30. I got my Saturn return from you, astrology babes. But it was the first time I've lived alone my entire life. And so I was very intentional about my space, about the people that I allowed in my space. I've lived there for a year and a half, and I think there's been maybe 10 people, even with my family, other people that I've allowed in my space. From the colors to the sounds to the smells to the smells to the incense, I use my home is my safe haven. I can say from looking at a car. I bought my very first car from a car dealership at that time. It was very anxiety-inducing. But even, even at my work, I make sure that my desk, I just try to make sure that every little space that I have, because I can't control the environment that I'm in. I have an office job if I'm at an event, but either way, I would find a corner to put my earbuds in and just breathe for a second. And I found that grounding, and I don't make any apologies for it anymore. Yeah. And then the other thing that I've learned how to do, but I'm still learning to do, and will always continue, is to embrace my different diagnosis. I think that there's so many things where we're okay, I have this thing, or squirrel brain, this, that, or the other, and we feel like we have to go to therapy or take our medication, which I think all of those things are wonderful, and I do those things, but also just being what are the gifts in this diagnosis?
Yeah.
If I have a hyperfixation, rather than, let's just go full force into it, as we talked about yesterday, enjoying it, so I let myself, when I'm at home, just run around the house and do my 5 things at once, and the cabinets are open and this thing's happening, but I just allow myself to have that, rather than trying to mask that so much. I'm just very intentional about the spaces that I'm in, the people that I allow in my spaces, and then I also just give myself permission to just go full force and to embrace all of these things that make me who I am.
I love that so much, Essie. You're a magical human. I love that, Essie. Thank you. Thank you for everyone sharing. Did I miss anybody that wanted to share? Okay. All right. I just want to make sure, because somebody walked out, and I want to make sure they didn't come back in, because I think they wanted to skip this part. Okay, so I lost my brother and one of my closest friends back to back. And this was during a time that I had decided to focus on my mental health for over a year. And I had been focusing on therapy, exercising, yoga, better sleep, less alcohol, journal writing, and my art. And it was almost like my past self was preparing my future self. And I'm really grateful that I had tools in place, because I'm not sure how I would have gotten through that time period had I not been taking my mental health so seriously. And also I'm really grateful to my spouse during that time, because that was a really hard year. I know a lot of us have heard the phrase, you need to put on your own oxygen mask first. But I will tell you, I have learned, and I've seen it firsthand in my life, how true that statement actually is. This is all the artwork I was working on during that time. we have to be caring for ourselves first. So the mannequin that I brought in here to Queer Spectra, it's out there when you go out and to the left here. The Eye of Ray. She was a huge part of my healing journey. And she represents so much of my grief was put into this mannequin. And my healing was put into this mannequin. And so when I say art is therapeutic, it does not fully embrace or describe the symbolism that is in her. If you want to ask questions later at the end or talk to me one-on-one about it, I'm happy to do that. I'm not going to go into it here. But I had put off starting on this mannequin for so long because of the person that had given her to me and just because I knew how hard it was going to be to work on her. I drug my feet. It took me 11 months to work on her. It does not ever take me this long to work on my mannequins, by the way. She's the third one of this series that I've worked on, so it usually takes me like maybe a couple months tops, not a year. There was this exhibit that had opened up to apply to, and I was really excited about it. Really, really excited. I don't know like how many artists we have in this room, but when you get like or directors, you know, you get excited to apply to something, writers, you get excited and you're just like, oh my gosh, I would be perfect for this. Yes, I'm applying to this. I can see my art in there. I'm gonna do all my witchy things. I'm gonna manifest. I'm gonna do this. It started to give me purpose and hope and move me in a direction. And I started working on the mannequin more. Andrea here came and visited me while I was working on the mannequin and gave me some ideas and some suggestions. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. It took the mannequin in another direction. And through working on the Eye of Ray, it helped heal parts of me. And it helped bring me back to center. And I learned to start being gentler on myself, gentler on others. I received the notice of rejection that I did not make it into this exhibit. And has there ever been a time, raise a hands or nod if you can't raise your hand, that you received rejection and you were grateful for it?
Maybe not initially, but later.
Or you dodged a bullet, you're like, oh, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that relationship did not work out. Or I'm so grateful that yeah, every time. Is that what you just?
I don't make healthy choices. I am now.
Okay, so at first I was like, oh, bummer. Like I really wanted that exhibit. But then I think the hope of that exhibit helped me finish the mannequin and get it in the direction I needed it to go. It gave me purpose. But the last 6 weeks, that mannequin was able to sit in a space with queer youth. And that's where she needed to be. Because she's such a healing piece for me, anyhow. And she got to be there in this space with queer youth. In the next 4 weeks, she'll be here. And I think she is where she needs to be, right? And so sometimes the universe has better things in store for us. Because otherwise she would have been outside. She would have been outside for like a month. I don't want her outside. What was I thinking? What was I thinking? I am so grateful she didn't make it into that exhibit. All right, we're gonna get into teams. We're gonna get to teams because you can turn your chairs around, you can grab the people closest to you. Because I have some questions. You don't have to answer all of these questions, but you can do some journal writing, teamwork, talk with people. If you're like my spouse, you don't have to talk to anybody. You can work solo. Just kidding, there's some people that they know. Okay. Okay, so the questions are going to be up on the board. The questions we're going to ask is, what helps you feel heard? How are you not feeling heard in your life right now? In a perfect world, how would you feel more grounded? And what supports do you need to feel more grounded? And And the most important thing, I think, is how can you be more gentle on yourself? Because during this process of working on this mannequin, I learned to be more gentle on myself. So we're gonna do some music softly, not so loudly, so that they can hear themselves. And then we're gonna work with a group. You can answer all these questions, you can pick one question, you can do whatever you want, because there are no rules. So, but we're gonna do this for the next 10 minutes. All right.
And then that's like rainy.
We are going to come back. All right. I loved all the laughing coming in the back. I'm so happy. Laughter brings me a lot of joy. I also love that you all got in to share. I could hear them sharing in that group, and I'm so happy. All right, does anybody want to share something that you shared in the group with the rest of the class? Somebody feel like sharing?
I was saying, what helps me feel heard is talking to people who can hear me.
Talking to people that can hear you.
Continually trying to be heard by someone who doesn't have the capacity, the ability to hear me. When I hear myself, then I know who can hear me.
I love that. Did everybody hear that?
Yes.
That wasn't a fun. Just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to make sure that they could hear you.
And the willingness to hear.
Yeah. Thank you. Does anybody else want to share something that they shared with the group? Yes.
For how I could be more gentle on myself, I wrote no more working until failure, because I feel like I do work myself until I get sick, or like I'm sore and I can't move anymore or anything, or I get so burnt out that I don't want to make things anymore. So I just wrote like letting myself take a break, actually, and be able to recharge without just like dying.
So rest while you're working. I have a sweatshirt that says rest is productive, and I love that. So being able to rest in between. Yes.
We talked a little bit about being gentle on ourselves with remembering the work that we're already doing towards grounding ourselves and mental health, and that it's so easy to make a checklist of things that you know you want to do. But if you're not appreciating what you're already doing, then how is that additional thing going to add any benefit to your life?
I love that. Yeah, recognize the work you're doing right now. Yes, absolutely. And sometimes just showering that day is huge.
I would say things that ground me are just action, because usually when I'm not grounded, I'm thinking way too much about everything I should be doing or could be doing. And even just like physically moving from one space to the other just, shakes me into myself again.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything on this side that I'm going on over here?
This woo back.
It's okay if there's not. There's no pressure to share at all. Thank you, everybody. That was really great. All right, so we have this incredibly small but beautiful garden that we make the most out of. And I do realize what a privilege that is, by the way. And gardening, like I talked about, it grounds me. And sometimes just sitting in it quietly grounds me. And years ago, I told myself this story that I was not good at gardening, I couldn't garden, I can't grow anything, that's for other people, that's not for me. And I found myself renting this small house that already had some raised beds in it, had a beautiful yard. I think you can see it, go back one. You can see it here with Ziggy. If you go back one really quick. This was the yard here. Well, that's it right there. This was my friend that came over to help with it. And I was telling myself, but I had this beautiful yard, and so I felt like I needed to do something with it. And that's where the Salt Lake Permaculture Guild came in, and they offered to hold my hand and help me, and volunteers came over, And I told them the same story that I had been telling myself for years. I said, I can keep dogs and children alive, and that is it. That are the only two things I can keep alive. I can't keep a garden alive. Like, it's not for me. And they made it seem so easy. They taught me things. And I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. Like, maybe this is possible. Maybe I can grow a garden. And I moved again, and I moved into a new rental, now with a different yard. That was more difficult to maintain, and I had a landlord that was easygoing and allowed me to do what I wanted to with this yard, plant what I wanted to plant. And the Salt Lake Permaculture Guild came back again, and they came back the next year and the next year, and they kept holding my hand because I needed a lot of hand holding, and I think they saw that. And I grew things grew. I learned more. Some things did well, some things didn't do so well, but I was doing it. And am I the best gardener out there? No, absolutely not, definitely not. But I can now confidently, without anybody holding my hand, like my training wheels are off. I can grow things, I can plant things, except for cilantro. If you have any tips about cilantro, please come see me after this. Because you can't grow cilantro either? What is up with that? I've tried everything. I am determined though. Every year I keep planting it, and I still cannot successfully grow cilantro. So my sweet baby sister, the one I'm going to see in a few weeks. By the way, she's not a baby. She's 35. But I'm going to. You know how when you have a baby sister, like she'll always be your baby sister. We'll be 76, and I'll be like my sweet baby sister. She will always be my baby sister. So she was visiting us one summer, and she's like, "Can I help you with anything this morning?" And I was like, "Yeah, you can go water the garden." And she was in and out within a couple of minutes. I was like, there's no way she watered that garden. But I realized that was my fault. I did not communicate to her how to water this garden. And she didn't know. She's never gardened before. She doesn't have a garden. She was being helpful. She just went out there and done, right? So I thought about it. I thought about my garden. I think about my garden a lot. And I think about the garden and relative to us, relative to me. Are we communicating to others what we need? To the tending that we need? To the weeding that we need? I recently weeded a lot of people out of my life. Felt good. And I know when I'm not hydrated, I feel it, right? And when my garden is attracting bees and butterflies, it brings me so much joy. By the way, I have so many different varieties of bees in my backyard. And I love to sit and look at them all. And I think about the different energy in people that I invite into my world. I'm very protective of that, by the way. I think back to the unexpected snow that my garden had. And about the bumps that we have in life and how we get through them. I think about how well our garden does when we prep it in the fall. Most recently, Em and I were so proud of ourselves that we had very little work to do on it this spring. Versus when we haven't prepped it in the fall. And when spring comes, we're like, why didn't we prep it in the fall? And I think about when I'm taking care of me and when I'm making time for me, like what you're saying with rest, right? And taking that rest versus when I'm making time for everybody else and focusing on everything else and not myself, right? So I think about my garden a lot. And I think a lot of people ask like why we don't put in an automatic drip or sprinkler system. I really enjoy watering the garden. I really enjoy the time out there and the time I spend out there. So I want you to journal. We're not getting in groups. You either sit down and write, what stories are you telling yourself right now? Because the story I told myself for years was that I was not a good gardener, that I couldn't grow things, that I was not capable of it. I told myself this probably for decades, that I wasn't good at it. So what stories right now are you telling yourself? And how can you change that perspective? Good job. How can you shift that perspective? What are you telling yourself right now? I I tell myself a lot of stories all the time, by the way. This is something I'm working on here. I'm really good at telling myself stories that are not true. What untrue stories are you telling yourself right now? Oh, we can do a song while they're doing this. Ugh. This heart that you're taking, by the way, is wildflowers. If you don't have a space to plant it, you can send it to somebody. I'm a huge believer of snail mail. I still mail out things every week. I love snail mail so much. Or you could just give it to somebody, I guess, in person. I guess that's still a thing, right? We get together in person. We don't just talk to people on the internet. Snail mail is not something you can ribbon. Oh, I can't jump around. This my song. Snail mail is my favorite. I'm keeping the Postal Service alive, one person at a time. You know how much money I spend on service. I have a pen pal that I've had for 25 years, by the way. So Rhea Earth, here is a resource. The next slide of resources, we're not going to get to that yet. But if you're just like, I would love to have a resource of some meditation at home or something to listen to before I go to bed or something calming or relaxing or grounding, this is the one I was listening to this morning. I've been listening to her for a couple of years. You can find her on Spotify, on YouTube. I want to be at that level of how she's able to, if you've ever seen how she does it, she invites more bridge building and is so brilliant on how she points out how uneducated, how do I say this?
Just say it.
How stupid the other people are. So, I don't know, but see, I don't know how to say that in a way that she'd be able to say that in a much more eloquent way. I'm still reading. Thank you. You're welcome. I think we're out of time.
Yes, if you have any last final words.
If you can grow cilantro soon after this.